Good evening, it's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. I'll try a video this way. The phone is working now. The phone videos, as long as I keep it emptied out enough. But some of the things I talked about over the weekend, and I think I have one of the videos, but I sort of have already covered some of it. And part of it is that I've dedicated my efforts, what I'm doing, my little mission, and what I'm enjoying so much is this cyber community of all of us. And you don't have to be in it or anything. It's nothing. It's just a spiritual thing. It's perspective, mostly of my perspective, of how wondrous it has been for the past, I think I've been doing these videos pretty consistently for about 2.5 years now, or over 2 years anyway. And just the different people I've met who come in and out or back or stay with, and how enriching it's been for me spiritually, and how inspiring it is. Your lives inspire me, and your spiritual journeys inspire me, and you become a huge part of my existence. I'm not attached. When people leave, don't check in anymore, it's all right. There's always someone else is coming and others leaving. And it's not that kind of a human attachment, but it's a spiritual grace. It's a blessing. I'm being blessed and blessed and blessed by beautiful souls. Even some in the past, they were angry, anti-Catholic people would get very angry, and which was sort of sad, but I found worth in that also. How easy it is to misunderstand that which we don't really know. We haven't experienced it, and we just go by our own perceptions of something. And I don't know how God's grace is how it had to have been that I grew up in a very anti-Catholic upbringing. And I knew when I became Catholic, my beloved grandmother, would be upset. But I thought, no, she's in heaven and she knows. In fact, she's the one that came to me to give me honor at the beginning of wisdom she gave me, and told me, wait until honor, but gave me the beginnings of wisdom, placed it in my soul. And she also was the one that foretold of hibernating, that I would need to learn to hibernate and to live in solitude. So it's just amazing how things can happen and how we progress in our spiritual journeys. And it's this poem I want to share, it's more of what it is when we go deeper into our spiritual lives. At a certain point, we go deeper in, not knowing really what we're doing, but for love of God. But we are growing in God, in the oneness of God, into the spiritual, from a previous step. And it's always cyclical. One vision I had years ago was I had asked, how does the soul live? How does it exist? How does it move? How does it grow? How does it move through? I had already had the death experience, but God showed me this rubber cone. And then as I looked out over the universe, there were many rubber cones. And they kept involuting and convoluting as they would flow through the universe. Speed through, but very slowly. It seemed slow motion, but so many I couldn't begin to count or even know how many were going toward the center of these cones, these rubber cones, that as they would go forward, they would peel back on themselves, involute and convolute, and they would do this constant involuting as they kept progressing forward, all of them coming from the outside into the center where God was. Oh, I'd ask the question, what is our soul? What does the soul look like? How does it act? What does it do? And our souls were all coming in to the center of the universe where God was. It was a tremendous mystical experience of seeing that and experiencing it and realizing that at base our soul moves like that. And we're constantly learning, constantly involuting and convoluting and coming in to center. There was great light in the center, and then also all around the peripheral there was light, then all this darkness, and at the very center of the universe then was God, was light. And it was powerful. But it takes a lot of prayer and timing and God's grace and his strength and courage to be willing to go in, to leave the temporal in little bits. It doesn't have to be huge, but to leave some aspects of the temporal and go deep into the soul of God himself. And so here's this poem. This is way back. This was back in 96, but I have another poem that's further back, like in 87, 88. And it's just the experiencing of how when we start to recognize that there's the temporal and there's the spiritual, and we realize that the temporal is just always passing away, and that what we really crave, we really yearn for, is the spiritual, the mystical, the spiritual of God, the oneness of the one with capital O, and to become one with the one. But in order to grow spiritually, we have to start letting go of the temporal. And I'm not saying ditch it and don't enjoy the temporal aspects of this beautiful life God has given us. But to be willing to, in our spiritual journey, to go deep, to go deeper into the spiritual. And that includes letting go of our tight grip on everything temporal around us, including people, including our children or our spouses, even though we're living with them, and love them. Or if when they grow up and take off, our children, or at other times, or with a spouse that we're deeply in love, but we're also spiritually growing at the same time. And hopefully our spouse is too, if you're married. And hopefully both then can have their spiritual journey and advance and progress into God more and into the inner silence of the soul and learn from God. But it's an individual journey. Consider this, the Psalms, I think Psalm 15, climbing the holy mountain. Once we start out in a group, our family, and then, we develop friends and the group enlarges and we marry and we have children, and that's a group, and we keep encountering life in groups. And then there comes the time when we're going up the mountain higher and higher, and the path is getting narrower and narrower, and we have to let go. We start going double, two people going up the mountain, and then it gets to be one person. There's not room. Well, there's not room on the trail if you have that imagery going of climbing a mountain. And then before long, we realize we have to go alone to the summit. We have to go it alone. And this is not physically alone, but within our souls and with what we're going to learn, within our spirit, our soul, our heart, our mind. There comes a point in time when we are going into the spiritual of God, the oneness of God, into the Holy of Holies, like the Old Testament priests, like Zechariah, John the Baptist's father. He was a priest, and he would have to go in to the Holy of Holies. And each priest of the Jewish tradition had a certain time that was their time to go in to the Holy of Holies and do a ceremony and prayers and light candles. And they would wear a cord, a silken cord around their ankles that had bell on it. Because if they got in there and they swooned and they were, taken up with God, then the fall or the taken over by the glory of God would cause the priest to swoon in the Holy of Holies. And if they would hear the bells tinkling, the other priests would pull them out by the leg, by the ankle, by this cord that had bells on it. This is how they did. Because such a powerful experience of entering into the temple, and then into the Holy of Holies of the temple. Now, in our spiritual lives, it's a going in within our minds, our hearts, and our souls to where we are seeking God, seeking divine union through our prayer. When we start praying and we get to contemplative prayer, and beyond that, it can become a little bit frightening the deeper we go. But, we always come back out. God always helps us come back out. But if we're forcing things, that can get bad. We have to go in God's time, not our time, and let God lead our spiritual yearning. And not just give up all of our, it can get so, God is so loving and so much of what we want. The more we get to know him, the more we want. And it can be a real temptation to start shirking our responsibilities in the temporal, or to a spouse, or to children, or to paying our bills, or, we don't want to, we just want to be subsumed into God. And the love, the more we understand God's pure love, the more we want that love, his love, and to be able to love him with that love and love others with that love. But the object of our love, the main and of our spiritual journey, is God. Coming to God, coming into God, and God taking us into himself. And to have divine union. And the yearning can be so great, but we have to let God manage it. Because we can go so deep, forcing ourselves, that we can lose our balance, lose our way. Lose a balanced mind, a healthy mind. Lose a balanced emotion. And not have balance in the temporal world. So while we need to let go of the temporal to some degree and not let the temporal be all there is. It's not, the temporal is not our religion. The temporal is not church. The temporal is not God. The spiritual is more representative. But the temporal is a means of understanding God and of understanding church, of having a temporal vocabulary, and to have objects. Well, my crucifix here, it's a temporal reminder of my Christianity, of my suffering with Christ on the cross, of my respect of all who suffer. It's a reminder of resurrection, that it's not just all suffering, it's eternal life. And even on earth, while my body is always suffering, my mind and my heart don't have to remain in that mode. And that's part of the spiritual journey, is how to be resurrected from temporal pain, be it emotional, mental, or physical. How to rise beyond and to be born again in love and in otherness and in God and in servanthood. But all of that is mostly a spirit. It's a spiritual action. And it's a grace involving God. God's the one that makes all of that happen. But we practice, we strive, we yearn, we pray for that grace. And we learn to let go of constant focus on our pain. And that's a resurrection of itself. It's a being crucified to the constant consciousness of it and resurrecting beyond it. And it's an off and on thing, because the pain is constant and it's temporal. The pain is temporal, but the pain is also spiritual. And in Mass, there's many temporal things. The stained glass windows, there's the altar, the tabernacle is temporal. The host in the tabernacle is tangible and temporal, but also spiritual, mystical. So what's the focus? So what are we going to focus on? The temporal? If we stay focused on the temporal, we will not ever grasp and come into the spiritual, the one reality, which is the spiritual of God, the eternal reality. What's forever and ever and ever is the spiritual. And the temporal augments beautifully and reminds us and leads us in to the Holy of Holies, in essence. But it's a tool. It's a temporal tool. It's like what I use to do the trim around the windows in here, and the flooring and the paint. And, I use tools, temporal tools and temporal materials. But what made it happen was spiritual. God's living in me, the Trinity dwelling in me, to give me energy, to make my mind, my heart, my brain work, my heart pump, my lungs breathe, my arms move, but also my spirit to feel and to praise God, to meditate and move into contemplation through God's grace. While I was painting this room, I couldn't so much when I was doing the window trim. I had to be consciously aware of how many inches and quarter inches or 3/16 and saw them correctly and at the correct angles and get them set right and the nail gun in the right place. That I could not be contemplating. So, but God makes everything happen. God's the basis of our existence and of our journey. So here's a poem that deals with taking the step to step away from the temporal and go inward, go into the spiritual. It's good to practice, not just to practice it, but to do it and to take leave. And the more we do, and the more we realize a oneness with God, with the spiritual of God, the oneness of His reality as the Spirit, the truth, and the way, and the light. Then things such as our kids cutting us off, or just in their own means of individuating out from us at a certain age, that's healthy. They need to go out and get their own lives going. And it can be very insulting if they choose to be totally opposite of how we are. But if we are experiencing and on the spiritual journey where we will have experienced God in spiritual experience of Him, in prayer and in deep ways of love, where we have gone into the tabernacle of our soul and heart and left the temporal for time periods, even if it's just a flash of a deep sense of being united with something greater than ourselves, something beyond ourselves, which is, God. Pure love. God is pure love. When we can have that pure love, then we'll understand that, the birds leave the nest. And the way they do it is not under our control. And it can really hurt, especially if they're insulting or they leave under angry circumstances or cut us off with anger. But we belong to God, and that makes all the difference in the world. If we belong to God and that we recognize and know the Holy Trinity dwells in us and we are in the Trinity. That is, God is the way, the truth, and the life. So are we with God and in God, the way, the truth, and the life. We are truth, beauty, and goodness because He is. We are light because He is. And yes, we sort of flip-flop back and forth because we're in the temporal and we're still temporal. And we're rather neophytes, no matter how progressed we may think we are or how old we are. Each new stepping out on the journey, each new step on the stairway to heaven can seem as if we're starting all over in our spiritual journey. So it's a constant, a metamorphosis ongoing, and it's cyclical. So here's this. I'm going to take a sip of this. I'm drinking green stuff. It's powdered plant stuff. Because I woke up this morning and I thought, I come from good genes, family. And I did call the surgeon and talk to a nurse and said, shouldn't I have a scan for my liver? because it shows, it's not right. Something's wrong with it. And they said, well, the doctor has read the reports, and she hasn't mentioned anything, but they're going to go ahead and send her a text. She's off this week, but she keeps checking in. And they'll mention my concern that, I should find out what's going on with the liver. But I read more about it. It could be just simple dehydration and diet. So I'm trying to improve. And I woke up this morning and I thought, get a grip on this. And realize I've had things before that even like the blood oncologist I go to, hematology oncologist that I go to for my latent blood cancer, he thought I had multiple myeloma. But he had to do one more test, and that was the spinal tap test. I had to be put under, and they did that. And it came back, no. It's called MGUS, M-G-U-S. It's sort of an imitation of, or a potential to have. But it isn't yet. So, so I get checked every year. If something would happen, I guess, last year I thought maybe something had happened and I called. But I was so sick for so long. But no, and they did some blood tests and no, I was okay. I was just very sick. 11 weeks, couldn't get the cough, the lungs thing, because I do have a bad immune system. My immune system is not good. The arachnoiditis can cause that. So I do have other things, but I thought, have a positive mindset as far as my health, and don't sweat it until you know things for certain. And it isn't that I am not willing to die or ready. It's the suffering, and temporally, though, I have things yet to do that I would like to do. But in reality, some people just die, boom, car accident or something, and they don't have all their stuff discarded. See, I want to make it easy for my daughter so she doesn't have to do, so much work on top of her own work in clearing out my stuff. And I want things to be handled well, like Gray Rocking pointed out, my invaluable rare book collection of mystics and hermits and spiritual direction and different saints and things. I've got this beautiful, incredible book collection. So I want to make arrangements, I think, with the diocese and have it be that people could have a book free or something, or if they want to have a library. But I just don't want them put in a dumpster or dropped off at the public library. The people who would really appreciate them then won't have access to these. Many of them are out of print. And very valuable. I spent a lot of money, of my mom and dad's money, on these books. So that's one thing. And I have binders and binders of writing, of spiritual insights, of my spiritual journey. That might be of interest to someone or to many people on the spiritual life in real time. How somebody moved through and strived or strove to get close to God and to have experience and knowledge and love with God. Love experiences with God. And the process and the ups and downs of it, though. I have all this stuff written. Oh my goodness. And things that God, insights that he gave me, or words, that I would write down. And that might be of interest to someone. Even maybe some doctoral student, I thought, who is, trying to figure out spiritual versus psychotic or something, I don't know. The spiritual process, the spiritual aspect of the human being, and what is spiritual and what is not. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. But I have bindings and bindings of, fat binders of stuff that I've written that has been a lot of it from God or inspired by God. So I don't think that my daughter should just dump all that. That might be of use to someone or of interest even, just of coinky interest even. So I don't know what to do with all of that. There's a man back in the Midwest who knows me, and he wanted all that. He's had worked for years for our Sunday Visitor, but he's older than me and in worse health. In fact, I haven't heard from him. I need to check to see if he's still alive. So thought that would he probably wouldn't be the best person to have all that stuff, because and he doesn't have the energy, I don't think, to even go through it probably, or and then to get it back there. So I'll see, who might want it, who might be interested or not. It can go to the dumpster too. It's not going to matter to me when I die. But just some of the spiritual experiences, like in my journals or even my temporal experiences, might help another person who has the same kinds of things and see how another person got through. I don't know. Here's this poem of going in, of when we first start, realizing we want God. We want the spiritual. And we've been neglecting the spiritual because it's been all temporal for us. I think of that beautiful young woman, married and mother, who's so in the temporal. And when she comes to and realizes, she may regret, the time wasted or the mental space or how rigid or something or strident she was, or when her kids grow up and they are burned out and they, no more of this, because they won't be enthralled with God because they haven't come into anything spiritual of him. And he's spirit, see? He's spirit, truth, light, life, and way. He's represented and becomes, through a spiritual means, his flesh and blood. But so many people are told with that, just have faith. It's just believe it. That, that there's no pondering the miracle or the aspect that God is spirit. And we come into union with him eventually through the spiritual journey, through the spiritual life, through our spirit recognizing that the Trinity dwells within, and spirit unite. Divine love occurs. We become pure love in God, his pure love, and we learn to love with God's love, as God loves, with purity of love. It's beyond even unconditional love. His pure love is beyond terms. But consider not having access to any of that because we've been staying with temporal words, temporal prayers, and never go beyond, and then doing it for the promises that we've been told we'll get, that were meant really for people in the Middle Ages who didn't have an education or an understanding. They didn't have catechism classes too much. I mean, they did, but we have grown as humanity. We have grown over the years. We've progressed. Even as people, we have progressed. over time. But we're stalling. We're stalling if we stall in the temporal. And the saints, the ones that are canonized and have these experiences with God, most of them do, and that's what intrigues people. But there's all kinds of people out there who have experience of God and in God. And they grasp the spiritual. They didn't get ensnared in the temporal representation. So we have to start somewhere. So this poem I wrote regarding some of that, and it's cyclical. Taking a step in time, keeping in time to life itself, finds life is now, not then or there, it's thou, capital Thou, God, it's thou. Having the courage to go within, to breach the gap of here to there and come back out, alive, like the black nothing around the moon and dead to hoary star pain, requires a semester or several, or just a blink of grace in soul school. I think for safety's sake and my own scaredy cat faith that I shall tie a silk cord and a bell of sarnia around my ankle and give the other end for you to hold. For another person. It was my godmother at the time. For you to hold, so that if I go into the Holy of Holies and don't come out, you can drag me back to this world of sorrows and joys. But wait until the thou, God, jingles the bell and snaps the cord, gives it a snap. Only then will the change have occurred. Only when I completely go may I completely return. So that was back when it was a deeper and a deeper that I would venture in to within. And to within, even with things that I would read, were getting more and more spiritually locust. John of the Cross, reading his writings. As opposed, I'd read Teresa of Avila's, and I started reading into John of the Cross, which goes deeper into a grasp of God and of the spiritual life, and uses a different language, it's mystical itself, his poetry, and then the bulk of it is his explaining his poetry. John of the Cross explains it because it's so deep itself, it's so spiritual, it's so mystical itself that it needs explanation. But at that point in time, I had came to a point where I had access to, even in the Mass, to go deeper, to understand that it was a spiritual, mystical reality. It wasn't just another worship service. It's far, far more. It's limitless, because the mystic portal, it goes, it has this world, but it leads into the eternal spiritual world of endlessness of God, of the Spirit, and of Jesus. Now Spirit. On earth he was man, he was God and man. So it's a process, and it is good when you're starting out. Have a friend or get a spiritual director if you can. Somebody who will say, you need to ease up a little bit. You're getting a little too much before you can handle it, or something. They don't need to say it like that. Have a safe word, and say, let me know if I am neglecting other things that I need to be doing. But have someone, it's good if you can have a priest spiritual director, because they can guide, and they have all this training in spiritual direction, even in their seminary and counseling, and they can help you discern what you're experiencing, if it's truly of God, because you'll start having spiritual experiences. The more you pray, the more you evolve in prayer and leave the verbal and the mental and go into more meditative, contemplative, affection, you don't want that, affection, praising, and wordless prayer, prayer of the heart, prayer of the soul. When God starts taking you out of yourself, then you have someone who understands these things and has a vocabulary to be able to teach you and to help discern, because the devil will try to get involved also. And granted will, every time you go deeper or do more or advance to another phase, grow, evolve in your love, grasp another aspect of God's pure love or of God himself, the devil will be right there trying to blow it up, trying to distract or trying to switch you up. And so having a spiritual guide, and or having even somebody to help remind you to keep going, but to keep balance. So this was one, just having someone to help, and to help give you the courage to go on your spiritual journey and come into union, to grasp the oneness of God, and that we will be one with God. So that's it. Praises to God who takes us on the journey, and in honor of this sister who taught me so much. Thank you, Sister Henrietta. Sure, she's in heaven. And we did have to separate our ways. She and I both did. She had gotten herself into the temporal a bit much, and into dissenting, a different mode than where I wanted to be and where God wanted me to be. And so I had to separate out, still love her, but had to move on. And then I had my spiritual father, a priest, be my spiritual director and be my guide. And I had him before anyway, but the sister got a little bit territorial. She didn't like it that I would go to him also for our conversations, our talks, and for my spiritual growth. So these things happen. It all worked out. She ended up getting pancreatic cancer and died rather quickly. But she did handle it before she died, and before she found out she had that. I think she handled it with grace, that we needed to part ways. And that can be painful. And I do have a regret with that I didn't go see her when she was dying. She was very ill one time. She had very terrible back pain. It happened. She fell and hurt her back. And I went to see her then. And then later I did write her a note when she was with cancer. But I didn't write in a note what she wanted to hear. I was still trying to get her to see, my view of, please come back around. Don't leave with the anger against priests. I think there was some resentment of priests going on. And that's a shame. That's a shame. But she's fine now. I'm sure she's fine now. And I've talked to her. I want to, again, even this video, I'll dedicate this to her. Although a priest, here's the relic. I'll take it off here so you can see the second class relic of Father James, Blessed James Alberione, that came. And I'm dedicating my efforts. And I've asked to be ex-officio in his society. That's from him. And I don't know if it looks like a drop of blood. I'm sure Koine can tell me, or if they just color it red, but it doesn't look even red. And a piece of cloth maybe, or surely not of his flesh, but if it is, it's even extra special then. It would then be, I think, a first-class relic. So, and then here's his image on the back. He died in 71, I believe, November 26th. And he was talented in leadership and in theology and in founding, organizing. See, and I used to be good at organizing and leading groups and developing this and that program, and he did a great job of having this all set up. So his spiritual life and the people, the religious sisters, the daughters of St. Paul, the priest society of St. Paul, and I've included the Apostle John with St. Paul in my little cyber community. It's just my little thing. I think somebody thought that it was, I don't remember who, thought that I was starting something official, and they didn't want to be part of it, and it wasn't like that. I was just doing it sort of as my own thing of appreciating the community of love for me, of others, of meeting other people through this cyber community of online. So I said a prayer and asked Blessed James Alberione to let me be part of the Society of St. Paul, and St. John the Apostle I've added, because he's the love, and that's the other focus of my existence. I feel that God wants me to really focus on in the spiritual journey is love, learning God's love and living it, practicing it, living it, and becoming God is love. All very spiritual. And to make sure that people are aware of the bridge to the spiritual in Mass, in church, in whatever they read, objects. It's a bridge to the spiritual of God is the way, the truth, and the life. So much love to you all. This went on way too long. I'm sure I've asked Blessed James to help me do a better job. God bless you all. Take that step. Have the courage. Pray. Most of you are long since experienced in the spiritual life. But if you're new on to here, take a step away and go inward with prayer and love of God, wordless prayer, Don't worry about praying verbal prayers with the idea that you're going to get some kind of a gift back or a promise back. Do everything for the love of God. Omnia pro Deo, as my spiritual father, Father Fahey, told me. He's deceased now, but eternally alive and helping with anyone who would ask him. Omnia pro Deo, he told me. All for God. He said, live your life all for God. Everything of it. And I often remind myself to repeat this. I am doing this for you, Lord, for love of you, for love of God, because I love you, Lord, and I need you, and I thank you for loving me and being in me. Amen. God bless His real presence in us. God bless you all, and thank you for being part of my community. You don't have to be. This is from my perspective of all the good that you have given me, of the love, the caring, the mentorship, the teaching, the instruction, the helping work through issues with my children. And I mentioned it in one of the videos that I couldn't post, but Gray Rocking mentioned things, how those closest to us often will bat us the hardest because they know that we love them. So they feel very free, sometimes too free, and say things that hurt and that they probably later wish they could take back, we would hope. But they say them because they know we're not going to leave them. We'll love them no matter what. That's part of pure love. And Koine then mentioned that another problem of disconnect within families is that we have God and other family members have chosen to go away from God. And that creates a misconnect, a disconnect. The misconnect being a misunderstanding of one another. Well, we understand them because God is all-knowing. But they don't understand us, or they resent because they were reared to know God and introduced to God and lived with God, but they've left God. And so there can be some guilt in that, underlying or subconscious, or some anger and not guilt. A feeling of that they were pushed or cheated and they didn't like it. My son is very angry with me, blames me, and has really said terrible things about God and church. Extremist things. So, and that's not good at all for his soul or for anything to be that hateful and to have that anger in him. It's not good for his body or his mind or his heart either. So, but that's part of the problem, is when we have God and we love God and we're on the spiritual journey and loving it, and they're not going to understand, because the more we learn and the more we grow and the more we love God's love, it's different than the world's love. So it makes this divide even in the aspect of love, let alone in daily life experience and living. Our joy, even in pain, even in terrible pain. Our understanding of the devil and of evil, and knowing what to do with it, how to deal with that, how to recognize it, and not let it taint us or imprison us or shackle us. Because God is in charge of our lives, and that makes a huge difference from those who don't have God in charge. So that's I realized, yes, that's a huge reason. And sometimes a reason why they may leave, cut off. They resent, they don't want, they don't understand it, and they don't want it because they find the allure of the temporal too much. Good, they want that world. And it can be scary going into the Holy of Holies, so to speak, into the depth of the spiritual darkness and nothingness. It seems like that. But God is there, God of light and life and the way and the truth. And you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Just have your cord on, have another person sort of with you, spiritually walking with you to help you stay in balance. So you don't, at the beginning, stay in too long. Got to come up, get some air, some temporal air, pay your bills, eat your meals, keep your brain and your heart and everything in balance. And let God lead. God doesn't take you in and dunk you under into his spiritual life. He does it by increments, metamorphoses. So you'll be in the cocoon and then he'll have you come out and fly and practice what you've learned and experience and rejoice. Rejoice in the spiritual experiences that had you up on the mountaintop with joy. And then resolve, you don't want to be down again either, because God will let you. He'll let you fall into the depths and he'll let you experience the devil. That's all part of the spiritual journey, to get to recognize evil. And the devil can imitate good. You have to learn all these things. It's a great adventure, the spiritual life, the spiritual journey. It's the greatest adventure anyone can ever embark upon, and the most rewarding. But we're not doing it for the reward. We do it because we love, and we want God, and we need God. We come to a recognition. We need God. Like Michelle in Australia, who's so alone right now and suffering. She has to keep her feet up. They're so painful with this rare foot ailment. And she does have pain med, and she can get food. So she can get up and walk. It's just excruciating to do so. Well, yeah. But she has to force herself to survive. But she really is, so pray for this for her and anyone like her. She really, because she's not a hermit. That's not her vocation. At least not yet. She hasn't been told that, and by God, and likely won't. But she needs some human contact. She's not had enough human contact and needs that. And she knows that. She says she does. She recognizes that she would like human contact in person. So I suggested, although it's hard to do, when we start to get down and so isolated, it's hard to be proactive. But I hope she'll pick up the phone and call a nearby parish or church or something, Protestant or Catholic, or anything, and senior center or whatever, because they have volunteers. A lot of older people want things to do, and they would love to come and visit if they knew about her, knew where she was, and knew she wanted some friends, just someone to come and talk with a little bit. Maybe they'd run an errand for her so she wouldn't have to be in agony to do it herself. But or take her out, even do the driving for her. She cannot drive, so just take her on a ride. I did that for my mother. We got her into the car when she had her pulmonary fibrosis, and she'd had a terrible breathing attack on the way back and nearly died right in the front seat with me. But so we didn't do it again. But that car ride just meant so much to her, just to get out. And I took her places that my dad used to drive us. out in the country, places that were beautiful and around town too, but for her memories, because she hadn't been in the hometown for a long time. They had moved to Arizona, but she came back to a nursing home there so that I could better come and help her and visit with her, help do things for her, run her errands, and she liked certain things. They only had iceberg lettuce at this nursing home. It cost so much. And she liked spinach. Well, who wouldn't? And darker greens, and olive oil drizzled with little sunflower seeds. So I would bring this and fix it for her in her room and stuff and things like that. Just little nice touches that she missed and that made her life more enjoyable. So, and I couldn't easily be out there because I had a home that was old. I had to, maintain it. And so I couldn't just be out there for the year helping. And I had a son in college who would be coming home at vacations. And, it's just better that she came back to her hometown. Plus the grave site was there. It just made everything easier for the practical realities of dying. So, but anyway, God bless you all. And let's keep praying for Michelle and for a human contact or several would be nice, wouldn't it? She's 55 and her the daughter who passed away, it'll be 5 years in January, and the other daughter left 7 years ago, cut off totally, which is very painful. But the more Michelle talks to Jesus, the more we get on our spiritual journey and find our spiritual mission. I'm praying that she find a spiritual mission, or at least try some, and one of them will click. God will guide her to it. But if we don't know immediately, just go ahead and try some. It won't hurt. God doesn't mind. And then he'll, we'll know it when we do it, when we find it. But there's many things we can do bedridden with our feet up. And also we got to get away, and I have a poem sort of about it, of the allures of the temporal. How, because we're brought up and it's all temporal. We're really brainwashed with the temporal in a way, in school, everything, because their parents were, it's so, goes back so far in history of the temporal is all, except for the few mystics out there in every century who were reminders. So that's why, another reason why I want to talk more about various mystics and their writings and things to help us realize this. The real world is the spiritual world. The temporal world is the augmenting, temporal, always passing away, helping us in this life. Because we have temporal bodies, we need temporal things. But other than that, eternity's spiritual. And God is spiritual. So, it makes sense, doesn't it? Well, oh my goodness, yes, this is long.